hope we also make up opportunities for New Zealanders to have jobs as well.
Gareth Hughes.
Kia ora, Mr Speaker. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou kia ora. I rise to speak in support of the Fisheries, Foreign Charter Vessels and Other Matters Amendment Bill. Mr Speaker, the Green Party supports this bill. It supports the intent of this bill. Mr Speaker, this is something we've been calling for years, even when Labour was defending the practice during the 2000s, Mr Speaker. For years we've been calling to end this abhorrent practice, and it's a good day that our Parliament is finally getting around to this, dealing with and hopefully addressing and stopping this abhorrent practice which has happened in our high seas for far too long and impacted far too many foreign workers in our name for our profits in New Zealand, Mr Speaker. First up, I want to acknowledge those people who put it on Parliament's agenda, the people who put it on the nation's agenda, who put it on our conscience. We've got the likes of the service and food workers, we've got the Sunday Star Times who ran a long campaign trying to highlight the injustices we see, and in particular Darren Coulston, who I've met a number of times and has tirelessly worked to raise this on the country's conscience, and he's done a good job. Because, Mr Speaker, this is an old issue, and very old issue. Listening to the government members, you'd think it was something new they've only just discovered was happening in our waters, but this exploitation has been happening for decades, Mr Speaker. I need not remind members, only in 1999 we had over 100 crew go to the New Zealand courts, to the Court of Appeal, yet it was the Department of Labour who sat on their hands and didn't act. Mr Speaker, it's clear that this has gone on for too long. We've been skimping on wages, we've been skimping on conditions, we've been skimping on costs, but the New Zealand quota owners, they've been feasting on the profits and the sweat of these foreign workers. It's terrible it's dragged on so long, but it's good that we're finally addressing it. The history goes back to the New Zealandisation debates we had in the 70s, which was around how do we go out and exploit, at the time as the language was, the deep sea resources which were being discovered mostly by foreign exploratory vessels, but New Zealand didn't have a deep sea fishing fleet, so the agreed plan at the time was we'd bring in some of the foreign capital, expertise, vessels, and we'd use that foreign assistance to develop our own industry. But instead what we've done is got hooked on skimping on wages and conditions with the foreign charter vessels. We've had, of course, the terrible impacts which we've seen on those real human lives, but also the country's missed out. There's around 2,000 foreign workers, I understand, employed in the sector. That's 2,000 jobs Kiwis could be doing at a time when the unemployment rate is as bad as the last time the National Party was in government. This is a big issue, 7.3%. 2,000 jobs isn't something to be skimped at. We've missed out on all that tax revenue, the ACC contributions. The whole country has lost by the policy up to date. It's good we're changing it. Disappointing we're waiting 4 years to finally implement the phase out of the foreign charter vessels. Hopefully this can bear and face some good scrutiny at the Select Committee, and hopefully it can be changed, because as everyone agrees, as we've heard from numerous Labour Party members, 4 years is far too long. There is no justification. Mr Speaker, I'm not sure if any other members did, but I researched my case and I submitted to the ministerial inquiry on the foreign charters vessels. And in researching and talking to fishermen, preparing for that process, what I learnt was there was absolutely horrible conditions. We know foreign workers were beaten on the ships, they were forced to work for days. But it wasn't just the working conditions, it was the ships themselves. Absolute rust buckets, unsafe conditions. We saw them and heard them not being paid appropriate wages. Of course, everyone knows the law said they had to get paid a minimum wage, but everyone knows that wasn't happening, in part because of the agents, in part because of the process. Mr Speaker, we very clearly heard that it was akin to slavery, what these Indonesians, Malaysians and other developing nations people went through. We've seen the dumping of fish, and tragically we've seen fatal consequences, most prominently when that 31-year-old rust bucket, the number one Insung from Korea, sunk in the Ross Sea with 22 lives lost. Disappointed the government's only addressing 6 of the 15 recommendations of that ministerial inquiry, but we welcome this bill. We support the intent. We'll be supporting it through the Select Committee. We hope people make submissions, because ultimately, Mr Speaker, what we're talking about is the future of our fisheries. Let's learn the lessons and the mistakes of the last couple of decades. Let's focus on a sustainable brand-based fishery so we can maximise those economic opportunities. Let's get those premiums from the high-end export markets who care about issues like Maui's going extinct, who care about issues like slavery when we're catching our fish, who care about the fact that we saw in the news last night we're killing dozens of endangered sea lions, 300 fur seals, around 70 common dolphins every year in our trawling fisheries. They care about the way we're fishing, so let's make the most of it, let's learn the lessons, let's have a sustainable fisheries. Kia ora.
Tim McIndoe.
Mr Speaker, we've had some very intelligent and thoughtful contributions to this debate from all members in the House this afternoon. I'd like to thank them for